Hello, everyone. Good morning, and thank you for inviting me to come here and talk about medication names. Um, I'm also a member of the EMA name-related group, and I think that's why I have been chosen for this. I joined that group, as thinking if you can't beat them, join them, and that's been my case ever since.
There's two ways. This is probably the easiest.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So do we have a problem with names? I would say yes, we do. But also remembering all the time that we have also other problems. But we do have problems with names of medications, and I've just listed a few here. Prograf, Advagraph, the case that we had a couple of years ago, they're both tacrolimus. Advagraph is a prolonged release formulation, and Prograf is a shorter release, which means that the Prograf you need twice a day and the Advagraph only once a day. And if you mix up those two, then the patient gets either overdosed or gets too little medicine, and this has caused serious harm. In the US, they had an error or several errors where people mixed up Lasix and Losec, and in fact, one of the names had to be withdrawn in the US. And then I mentioned just a couple from Denmark. We had a patient, that was in fact many years ago, who was on Panadil, which is a paracetamol drug, and the patient instead got Plendil, which is a calcium blocker, and she suffered from edema, and she had a hip fracture because of falls, and she had 3 admissions until the error was discovered. What we did at the hospital was that we said we would not have Plendil anymore. So we took sort of our own regulatory decision here. And then just a few weeks ago, we had this error with mix-up between Emerel and Truxale in handwritten prescription, and this caused admission for a person who should have Emerel, which is an immunosuppressive, and she got Truxale instead, which is an antipsychotic drug, and she got really sedated and had to go to hospital. I think if you look at those last two names, Emerel and Truxale, this is really difficult to identify. If you were looking at that name pair, I don't think you would identify that anyway to be two medicines that could be mixed up. This is just to tell you how difficult this is. And then, of course, we have the whole set of generic names, and I've just taken one here, Vinorelbin and Vinblastin. We had a child who got the wrong chemotherapy. Luckily, it was stopped by the parent because the bag looked different. So these were just some examples. And then do we also have data on this? Yes, we do have some data, not very much, but we do have a little. Mike Cohen from the ISMP in the US, he says that up to 25 of the medication errors reported to the ISMP are related to names and packaging. We did a study in Denmark some years ago in which we found that 7% only of the reported medication errors in a hospital setting were related to names and packaging, and the vast majority were related to label and packaging, not to the name. If you want to see examples, then you can just go to the website of ISMP. They have a list, and it gets longer every week. So there are several medication mix-ups because of packaging and in particular names. So how do we classify name errors? They can be classified in very many different ways. The way we usually classify them are lookalikes or soundalikes. Lookalikes, they are the ones where you mix up the handwriting, the typing, or the computer pick lists. And the soundalikes are, of course, phonetic mix-ups where two medicines sound alike and the doctor chewing gum and then not pronouncing them correctly or something like that. Then we can classify into the type of names, which would be generic names and brand names. And this is quite important because the brand names are invented, of course, by the companies, and those are the names that we discuss in the NRG group, whereas the generic names are recognized or accepted by the WHO, and that is a group that has a lot of scientists involved, and they're very interested in that the medicines have the correct ending or beginning, and in this way they actually increase the risk of errors. And then, of course, you can also classify into what part of the name is involved in the error, for instance, if it's a qualifier, if it's the numbers, if it's abbreviations, and so forth. So what do we know about the likelihood of confusion when you go into the literature and when you go into the experience of name errors? First of all, it seems that some letter combinations are more popular than others. we have what we could call occupied clusters. And there is a dilemma, as I said, with these strong generic stems. You can just go in and check those lists at the ISMP, and you can just see that some names groups seem to be occupied. And that is, in fact, a major issue in the NRG group, that sometimes we get names that fall right into an occupied cluster, and we just can't accept those names because they will be mixed up right away. And then we also know that differences in the middle of a name and similarity in the beginning and the end is a problem, because the eye or the brain seem to read or recognize only the beginning and the last part of a word, and therefore this may cause errors, as example, plendil, panodil. And then we have those very, very long names with qualifiers. They seem to get lost in the prescribing process. So the last part of the name sometimes get lost, or there is an abbreviation invented by someone, and then you don't get the whole name and the patient gets the wrong medicine. And then again, the qualifiers are really a problem. There are many different qualifiers for protracted and rapid onset. We sometimes in the NRG try to collect our knowledge on this issue, and we always get depressed at the end, because we find maybe 10, 20 different qualifiers for the same thing, and that's really, really difficult for the healthcare staff to remember. I have to say that. They can't remember it. So they mix them up and errors happen. And then we have this very interesting confounder, I would say, the so-called cognitive errors. You can read about them in a paper by Bruce Lambert in Drug Safety from 2005. And what he says is that common names are easier to remember, to identify, which means that rare names may be misinterpreted as common names. That is, you will always pick the common name. If you have a prescription and you are maybe a little bit in doubt, maybe it doesn't even get to your cognition or to your content brain, but the common name will be picked, even though it should be an uncommon name. I think the example of the Imural Truxale error could be an example of this. So other likelihoods of confusion could be names ending with an L. Names ending with an L, the L could also be a 1, and that could be part of the dose or the strengths. Then if you put numbers as part of the name, Novomix 30. I've seen several medication overdoses where 30 units were given, and it should have been 10. But the 30 was misunderstood as a dose. And then if you part names and strengths by this dash here, then it may imply concentration in some countries, and therefore you may have errors of dosing also. And then again, if you put abbreviations into the name, both if in the invented name itself or abbreviations invented by staff, then you get errors. And then I go to the next part. Strengths is not really a name, but we decided, Jan and I, that I should just give you a few comments on strengths, because strengths expression is really, really something that is a hot topic, and it's something that can create almost fights among patient safety people around the world, because the change of the expression of strengths is the worst thing. You have a way you express the strengths, and that's okay, but if you have to change it, then you see the errors. So for instance, confusion between concentration per ml and the whole bottle content is an issue. In the southern part of Europe, they use whole bottle content, whereas in the Scandinavian countries, we use concentration per ml. And when we get the other thing inside the house, then the staff doesn't recognize this, and they misunderstand it, and maybe they give 10 times overdose. And then we have also the problem, which was mentioned by my colleague from Spain yesterday, the Hellebek case, where we have confusion in what the strengths actually relates to, the salt or the active substance, or the prodrug or the active substance. This is always an issue, and I will not repeat what was said yesterday. And then finally, the use of international units as strengths is not very good, because the abbreviation IU creates errors in handwriting, because it can be misunderstood as 10. I have a picture of that. In Denmark, it's not IU, it's IE. And you can see here that there was a prescription saying 61 liters of insulin, which is quite a lot. And probably no one would give that, because they would have to get pharmacy moving at night. But somebody might give 61 units. And in this instance, it was 6 units. So you can see here two things. Handwriting is not good, And you can also see that using this IE or IU is not very practical. I know that this is a pharmacopoeia thing that has to be changed, but I think that maybe that could be one of the conclusions we could get today, that we have to work together with the European Pharmacopoeia to get some of these errors out. So what can we do to reduce confusion here? There are some low-hanging fruits. It's not many, but there are some. In the label and pick lists, first of all, it is well known now and shown by Philic and colleagues that you can use intermediate tall man lettering. This results in fewer errors. And this has in fact been implemented for certain generic names in Australia, in the US, and in Denmark. I have a photo of it here. You can see the vinblastin, which is BLA in the middle, and this is with capitals, and the rest is with small letters. And this is really important because you have to make it easy for the staff to do the right thing. If you don't do that, then all the time they will do it wrong. For instance, you can see here that there was something done wrong. This automat at the gas station was not correct, and you can see what the usual way of how we worked before with disclosing who made the error. I don't think that's fair. So let's move on. Another low-hanging fruit, I would say, is to put. I know the industry puts a lot of work into the labels, but I think that even more could be done. In Denmark, we did a study some years ago where we made a new label design for a company that is publicly owned. And we did that with a design company, and what they said, they used the book, the design book, from which is made by the National Patient Safety Agency in the UK. And what they came up with was that you should use small letters, not capital letters, only if you do it intermediately. And I think I have a figure here. Yeah, you can see here to the right that were our own old ampoules for very important drugs that you need in acute situations. And you can see that they're capitals. And this is very difficult to read for the human eye. All people who work in advertisement and graphic design, they know that. But apparently not all designers of labels do. And then we had the labels changed, and you can see on the left side that you have a much more complicated pattern of the word itself, and that is better for the eye, I have been told. So you should also use space around the name on the label. This company that we had to help, that helped us, the E-Types, they said that we needed to clean up the label. Not all this unimportant stuff should be there, or drawings or logos of the company. All that information should be minimized. There should be space around the name. And we should use a font, a name font that was designed for easiness to read on labels, in particular for ampoules and other small labels, because otherwise doctors who are older than 40, they cannot read them. This is important. So that's what can be done by the industry. But as David mentioned yesterday, then the pharmacovigilance work has to be extended today also to consider documentation. The computer systems for ordering and documenting dispensing and administrations are really, really important factors in the medication process. And something that can be done quite easily, I would believe, is to improve the design of prescribing systems, including the computer pick lists, because very common errors are picking the wrong line. It's called juxtapositionary errors. It's a nice word to say, juxtapositionary errors. You should remember that, because it's really important that we also start looking into now, not only are those two names similar when you look at them in typing, but when you look at them right after each other, how do they fit? And this is a very hot topic in human factor research, because it's relevant for all people who do electronic work. And then, of course, another thing which is close to this is that, in my opinion, handwriting should be prohibited, or doctors, not only doctors, but also pharmacists and nurses and even patients should be trained in handwriting, because this skill is in fact dying out. It's very difficult for people to write in hand. I think I've bought a book about how I can teach handwriting, so I'm going to make some very expensive courses for doctors in Denmark, and then they might come. Exotic places and stuff like that. Anyway, now we're moving into the NRG group, which I joined, remember? And what we do in the NRG group is that we do case-by-case evaluation, and we evaluate risk for public health in pre-identified risky name pairs. So the countries, when new names are proposed, then they check their own databases, and then they come back with risky name pairs, and then we evaluate them. And we look at risk for mix-ups, and in that context, we look at the strengths, the dosage form, administration times, and so on. And we also look at if it's likely that the two names at any time could be stored together. And then we look at risk for harm, which we find very important, because luckily not all mix-ups cause harm. The patient usually would get a drug in a normal dose and then just clear it out by the body, and then it would be gone. But some do cause harm, even one dose in the wrong patient, and it's very important that we pay attention to those. And then, of course, also we look at orphan drugs where there is this risk of the cognitive errors, as I mentioned before. And also we take into consideration whether new pharmaceutical forms and new routes of administration would change the pattern. And just two important things for you to remember, which are also in the guideline. We suggest that you avoid qualifiers consisting of a single letter or numbers, because we have this confusion with strengths or prosody of the medicinal product. And we also recommend that you avoid inserting the whole invented name of the individual active substance in the proposed name in combinations, because there will be confusion between the combination and the single product. So those are just two small take-home messages for industry. And how to prepare for getting a name into the NRG group. Well, we suggest that you do your own database search for potential mix-ups of name candidates. It's a very good idea. You can do it automatically. There are some companies that also can help you with that. It may work for the industry. We tried to also do automated searches, and it didn't work for us because we have 25 countries and at least as many languages, and we also take into consideration names that have been recently off the market and names that are not on the market yet. So we have to do this kind of case by case. And then we also suggested that the industry does, that you do your own evaluation of risk of confusion and risk of harm. It's not mandatory to do a proactive analysis, but maybe this could be the way forward. So in conclusion about the names, name confusions are frequent among medication errors, somewhere between 7 and 25%. They occur for many reasons. Many parts of the name can be confused, and it's not only confusions with other names, it's also confusion because of for instance, ending with an L or numbers in the name. There are some low-hanging fruits for improvements, which you can just start tomorrow. But in my opinion, we also need global consensus on these issues about strengths expression. I think that's very important, and also about how we use qualifiers. The NRG group reviews all new proposals for invented names, for risk of confusion, risk of harm, risk of cognitive errors, and applicant standardized proactive analysis may be a way forward, and we do welcome feedback, and we are very interested in getting you to use our mailbox for any name errors that may occur. Thank you.